And why don't you go ahead and start the recording, and then I'll officially do the welcome all over. Good morning, everyone. We'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. Today is Thursday, May 27th, and today's webinar is going to focus on I Got My Contract, Now What? Post-award considerations. My name is Shonda Harris, and I'm a business opportunity specialist with the Small Business Administration here in Columbus. And today's webinar is being brought to you by SBA and Ptac. It's a collaborative partnership that SBA and Ptac has, where we feature government contracting workshops on a monthly basis. So this is part of our government contracting series that we actually do for the year. And with that in mind, if this is your first time joining us, we'd like to welcome you. Actually, today's webinar is the end of the series for this month. This month, we kind of focused on just different type of contracts, different type of federal contracts, notifications, and responding to RFPs, RFQs, sources sought. And today, we really wanted to give our small businesses an opportunity to find out, once you did go after a contract and you actually won that award, what comes next? And so that's a whole nother set of interesting things that you need to be abreast of. And so we felt the need to kind of put together a training series for that. If you are joining us today, we do recognize that some of you may be at different stages of your development for government contracting. You may be at the beginning phase, you may be in the middle, you may be a seasoned contractor, or you may be someone who's interested in doing business at the federal level. You are also in the right place. If there are a lot of things that you hear today that you need to get more information about or a better understanding, the Ptac is the right organization for you to actually follow up with. So today's webinar, with that said, today's webinar is being brought to you by the Dayton Ptac counselor, Billy Grill, and he will be sharing a lot of great information. So if you don't have a pen and a paper, I definitely suggest that you take some notes. If you aren't able to, it is being recorded, and this will be posted on the Ptac's website, along with the other webinars that we've been doing. Again, this series is focusing around the different type of contract awards and post-award consideration today. Last month, we focused on capture management. And then next month, you still want to make sure that you join us next month as we talk about best practices for continued contract success. And then at the end of the month, we'll also feature something on SAM. If you're not aware of all of the different updates that have happened to betasam.gov, which is now sam.gov. So without further ado, just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. We will be, again, recording this, and during Billy's presentation, if you do have a question, we're going to ask that you would type it in the chat. We'll try to address that as we go along. We do appreciate everybody having their microphones on mute. In addition to that, I would like to ask, if you do have on your camera, if you could also turn off your camera so that it doesn't also distract. We'd like to ask that as well. So with that, Billy, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, and Billy will give an overview about Ptac, who Ptac is, and the type of services that they offer, and then we'll go ahead and jump into the webinar.
Thanks so much, Shonda. I really appreciate the introduction and the help with the logistics and everything surrounding all of our events with the SBA. Some really great content that we've shared so far this year. And it's taken the whole team, many stakeholders, many resource partners, and just a variety of people with different expertise to pull this information together for you guys. And you'll see when we go through the presentation today that it takes very much the same within a company to be successful. It really does take, it takes the whole team to make these things work. And without further ado, I will get my presentation pulled up. By the way, what you're seeing in the background is part of the Air Force Research Lab Small Business Hub. They have these really cool baffles on the wall that sort of muffle sound a little bit to keep the spaces private. I really appreciate them lending me this space to do this presentation today. If you're ever in Dayton, it's the Air Force's storefront downtown. So it's a really cool space, and it is open to the public if you're ever interested in touring or getting more information about it. So the topic at hand, I got my contract, now what? You'll see my contact information is below. I welcome any and all questions, any requests for assistance. I tell all of my clients, if I don't got a guy, I got a guy who's got a guy. You know, we often lean on our different partners, our other Ptac counselors, and the people that surround us to be able to do this job effectively. I will certainly help and answer what I can, but I may have to get an answer at a later time. I may have to defer to Jane or Shonda because there's just no way that we can all know all of this. But in the meantime, let's get the presentation started and just run through some quick agenda items. Really what I did here is I wanted to put it in chronological order for you guys to show you, okay, step A, B, C, D, and E, the different steps along the way, the different departments, the different help you'll need, but also how one step affects the other. You know, this is definitely a very intertwined type of system. So how you prepare for an award very much affects all the way down to project closeout. And so keeping these things in mind, knowing that there are strategic implications to your actions and decisions, it really helps you see that big picture of how the system of processes works. And in my background personally, I come from, I've been just outside the fence my whole career. My first position was with a small strategic consulting group called the Green Tree Group, and I was marketing associate, marketing to the government. But then I grew into a director of business development, working a lot of these issues on the business development side. And eventually I was sort of a dual role, VP of operations and director of business development. So I've seen the internal processes, the back office processes. I've been involved in some of these negotiations. I have a pretty broad scope of experience around a lot of these issues. But at the same time, I know when my expertise stops and when to holler for help. Because it really does take a full team to push these things through, to get some of these projects to the point where they're being able to be deployed and being successful. A little bit about the Ptac. This is some basic stats from 2019. I'm sure they'll be updated. But nationwide, the Ptac services were able to help small businesses with $24 billion in contracts. And that's over 57,000 businesses. So you can see our footprint is pretty big, pretty substantial. We currently have 94 Ptacs with over 300 local offices. And there's a locator that I can send. I should have put the link on the bottom of this page. I'll get that update made. But there's a finder on the Ptac page. So if you Google Ptac finder, it'll pop up the page where you can find Ptacs by state. We are administered by state governments, universities, community colleges. So we're a local resource. And that has some impacts, beyond being convenient to get to and talk to. We often know our local resource partners like the SBDC, who's a great resource for any small business. I really like working with clients that work with our local SBDC because I know that their internal processes are becoming mature enough to do business with the government. And that's so important when you're looking at expanding into this space, because while there are some barriers to entry, it is still very competitive And your competition is going to have their internal business processes together. They're going to have what we call the bail in the SBDC world. Your banker, your accountant, you're an insurance, you're legal. So if you haven't done it already, highly suggest you reach out to your local SBDC along with working with your Ptacs. And the other great thing about Ptacs being local is the fact that we know the local landscape. So here in Dayton, of course, I have a bit more knowledge about Wright-Patt Air Force Base than a counselor out in Tucson, Arizona. But at the same time, if we need help and information about NASA going up in Cleveland, we have a great counselor in Cleveland. We're lucky to have James Stewart online with us today, who is one of the best, most knowledgeable experts that I've interacted with on GSA schedules. So if we need something outside of our little purview here we have as a counselor, we have great reach back on our team. This is one of the most knowledgeable teams I've ever worked with. Everything from college and state purchasing through certifications. We have great partners like the SBA and Shonda that work with us daily. And I found out yesterday Shonda is former Ptac herself. So we have a lot of history here. We're one big happy family. Our mission is to train our clients and help them with the myriad of nuances in government contracting. Government contracting is, it's a very complex environment. It's intimidating at times, even to me. But we help our clients navigate those different issues and offer the best value to the government and to be as competitive as they can be. And we do that through guidance, advice, answering questions, group training events. Education is such a big part of what we do. Even as Ptac counselors, we are continuously educated. I take at least one training every week. And we also have a great bid matching service. Bid matching is a huge value add because our bid matching system, it searches through 2,800 different databases on the federal, state, and local level. And as Ptac counselors, we take your information, we create criteria for the search, and then it sends opportunities to your inbox every day. So it's really a valuable tool that we use, and we hope it helps the clients as well. But we also have market intelligence tools that we use internally. So if you need competitive intelligence, if you need customer profiles, if you need overall business forecasts, things of that nature, we can always bulldog that data for you. I, again, am a recovering marketing analyst and former data wonk. So I enjoy nothing more than going through and digging through some data and trying to make it actionable information for my clients. And the best part of all, we are free. We are paid for through a DLA funding bucket, and we are graciously hosted by the Ohio University, who's just been a real advocate, and they went above and beyond for the Ptac mission. This is a chart I like to include with almost all of my briefings. I created it a month or two ago, but this is how the Ptac helps you throughout the acquisition process. So you'll see that we start at the very beginning with things such as capability statement development. We help you with market research. We help you get your SAM registration, your DNB registration, all the myriad of registrations and certifications. Then when it comes time for pre-solicitation, I'm constantly on the lookout for industry day notices. I want my clients to be as informed and connected as possible before considering an opportunity, because I can bet you that the competition will be. And this really is where you start developing your competitive advantage, is all the way back in the market research phase. If you're seeing an opportunity for the first time and it's already an RFP, I would say 9.99999 times out of 10, I'm going to advise to no bid, because I know people have been in the program office since day one. creating their competitive advantage, talking to the client, really getting down to what the client's needs are. And if you're not there in that time frame, then you're at a huge disadvantage. And these proposals are expensive. Even putting together an RFQ, it takes a lot of time, it takes energy, and there's a big opportunity cost to it. And then post-solicitation. That's where we're getting to today. What are we doing to negotiate your contract? How are we making that first impression with the kickoff meeting? That is so important and just pivotal to the project, because what you're doing is you're setting the stage. You're letting the client know that you're proactive, you're prepared, and that you pulled in all of your expertise and the full weight of your capability to ensure the project's success. And I can tell you the beginning of the project, that can really dictate the tone of the project moving forward. I've been on very hugely successful projects, and I'm proud to say that I've been on huge disastrous failures as well. I think the lessons to those failures are just as important as the lessons that I took from the successes. And I'm open and free to talk about the debacles I've been a part of. I think they're badges of honor at this point. And we'll dig into some of those stories as we move along here. But just wanted to really frame this, that the Ptac throughout the acquisition life cycle, we're available, and we have expertise and resource to really improve your chances of success. Either leaning on our own experiences or the experience of others to give you guys the insight and the information you need to put together your best effort to be successful. The biggest thing about preparing for your award, first thing, right after any kind of notice, is your debrief. FAR 15, if you're ever curious about the different FAR clauses, FAR stands for the Federal Acquisition Regulation. It is a codified set of rules that we all abide by for different acquisitions. And in the DoD, they go one step further and they have the DFAR, the Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation, which it builds on the FAR. But there are some different nuances in the DoD space. I am actually mid class in my DFAR training. I came in having, I'll say, a bachelor's in business development, but I am quickly gaining a master's in government acquisition as a whole, with a focus on the DoD space, given my proximity to Wright Pat, my prior career path. But win or lose, request the debrief. When you lose, it's tough. You think it may be awkward. It doesn't have to be awkward. What you're going in to do is to learn. Learn what was compelling about your proposal. Learn what could use some improvement. Learn where you were graded high and learn where you were graded not so high. Because this will really help you take home lessons learned and improve your proposal development. Your proposal is a huge piece of marketing for a company. If my clients or if my business doesn't have what I think it takes to put together their best effort proposal, I always suggest a no bid, because I would rather put no foot forward than a bad foot forward. You always want to consider the messaging that you're putting in front of the government. In order to really get the most out of a debrief, you want to come very well prepared. Read the proposal in full. Understand the different parts of your solution. Understand where you may think you have weak points, because you definitely want to learn from their feedback, because you never know. It may be something completely unrelated to what your perception of your proposal was. You definitely want to bring note-taking materials. And afterwards, this is just as important, conduct an internal lessons learned. And that lessons learned should not just be a proposal manager and your head of business development. you should be pulling in your VP of operations. You should be pulling in leadership. You should be pulling in people that are able to affect change in the company. And that's everything from contracts management to accounting to the lowly marketing associate who just started as an intern out of college when they were 22. So just a good, really good practice is to make this a team event. Your registrations. I deal with this often. Your SAM.gov registration, make sure it's up to date. It's necessary for a contract award. You want the SAM registration to be current before you submit, but also make sure your POCs are up to date. This is huge because the government contracting officer, they're not going to send an email asking for all your pertinent information. They're going to the official record. SAM.gov is the authoritative data source for your entity information. They're pulling directly from that. Now, what does SAM.gov affect, you say? Well, for one, it affects your ability to get paid because after that, you're going to be setting up your wide area workflow. Wide area workflow is your entrance into the government invoicing payment system, and we help with this. So, you know, just a quick FYI, this is something that I've helped many clients with. This is and can be a headache. This can and very much will affect your ability to get paid on time. So you want to make sure that you're constantly communicating and making sure that your cage is added to the group structure. Make sure that your designated group administrator is present, available, ready. And you definitely want to look at taking some online training, which I've linked below. It is not the most intuitive system, but it is a necessary evil. And I can assure you that you will want to be proactive in getting your registrations taken care of for this system. Because if you're like any other small business, cash flow is a concern. You want to make sure the government's paying their bills on time. And you want to make sure that you're not walking back through your entire SAM registration in order to make sure that your banking information is correct for wide area workflow. And some of this happens, guys. You know, it's that's what we're here for, is to help you through some of these hiccups. But just as you know, kind of a foot stomp, registrations are important, and they are one of the first parts of preparing for your award. Pro tip from inside the fence. I want to thank all of the people who helped put this presentation together. Again, it takes a village, and a great group of folks were the small business offices over at Wright Pat Air Force Base. I can tell you that our current environment here in Dayton, working with Wright Pat's small business offices, working with the Air Force Research Lab Small Business Hub, working with our resource providers like the SBA and the SBDC, they make all of this happen with us. And they've been huge in helping answer questions, helping giving different perspective. So throughout this presentation, we'll get some pro tips from inside the fence to see how those contracts managers, how those small business offices view these different nuances with contract awards and post-award considerations. So pro tip, small companies that are new to the PIEE/WAWF struggle with some of the fine details about how to submit what code goes in what box, so that the right folks can get in on the government side and keep the payment process moving. So that tells me that even inside the fence, they're cognizant of some of these hiccups in the different systems. When in doubt, contact your Ptac. Make sure your contracts manager, your contracting officer are looped into the conversation. You want to keep that dialogue open, because those are the ones that will be moving this process forward.
Billy?
Yes.
We have a few questions that have come in.
Oh, by all means.
And all right, I'll do the ones pertaining to this first. The first one, what are some of the factors to consider when bidding on a recompete contract?
Excellent question. How I look at recompetes, One of the things that I help some of my companies with set-asides. This set-asides affect recompetes because if the current incumbent is an 8A who is graduating the program, that project has to stay an 8A. So that's some low-hanging fruit for some of my 8A clients. Outside of that, you should be collecting intel. You should be looking at and asking about how satisfied the client is with the current incumbent. You should be asking about or doing your own internal research to see if that incumbent is graduating, any socioeconomic statuses, if they're going from a small business to a large business. You should look at external pressures to the program as a whole. Is that program going from a legacy system to a modernized solution? Because that can affect the program in a way where the incumbent no longer has that past performance advantage. You want to look at the incumbent's team. Is it possible to talk to the incumbent, become a subcontractor on the recompete? Are they happy with their subcontractors? You want to look at the projects around that program, because a lot of these, at least from an IT perspective and a services perspective, the programs and projects and systems at base are interconnected and interrelated. And that holds true for all of government agencies. A lot of data is feeder to another system. A lot of systems gather data from other systems. So you really want to be, you want to have that perspective of how the big picture fits. And a lot of this information, you're going to have to be well connected in the community. I tell all my clients, even though we're guided by the federal acquisition regulation, this is still very much a relationship-based business. You want to participate in the different communities, meaning industry associations. You want to be attending industry days. You want to have a relationship with your small business office. You want to have a relationship with your Ptac, with your SBA, with your SBDC. All of these are necessary resources and partners that will help you along the way, and will help you help yourself.
Okay, thank you. The next one, can someone attend a debrief session as a standalone, or do they have to attend as a proposal team if you teamed up with another firm for the proposal?
Certainly. So a lot of the teaming agreements I've signed on with a prime contractor gives the primary communication with the client to the prime contractor. So it would be the prime contractor's determination whether or not you attend a proposal debrief. I can tell you, usually it's just the prime. But you guys may have a really close relationship, a mentor-protege type of relationship that changes that. So there are circumstances there that are extenuating. Now, from a debrief standpoint, the government may limit the amount of representatives that you have at the debrief, so that could be a factor. You definitely, either way, want to have a chief spokesperson for your team, which is usually somebody from the proposal management side or from leadership. Usually, leadership likes to be present. I can tell you that it probably won't do a whole ton of good, at least in the debrief, to bring people from accounting and people from contracts. I would try to limit the scope of that. But the important piece is to take copious notes, to make sure that you are fully prepared for that debrief by reading your proposal. The last thing the last thing you want is to not be prepared and be not on the same page when you go to that meeting. Because remember, you want to let the government know at this debrief that you fully intend on proposing to future work, and you fully intend on pursuing them as a partner and a client.
Okay, we have two more here. This next one is, okay, if someone wants to learn more about a debrief, Could they also attend a debrief session, especially if they did not submit a proposal?
No, that will never happen, mostly because our proposals to the government contain sensitive company information. We're not going to share that outside a company wall. And in the government, they don't want the liability of potentially sharing that information outside of our company.
Okay, thank you. Yes, right. And this one is not necessarily something related to this, but more Ptac and the services. Does Ptac offer guidance on DCAA compliance?
That is a great question. Ptac's role is to guide and advise. So I can share with you standards and compliance documents. We do not execute. We can give you some information on some external providers, such as, I use a lot of resources from kind of differing accounting firms, Left Brain Professionals out of Columbus. They have a great resource page that I allude to a lot. And also DCAA has small business liaisons that we can connect with. So while we won't execute on that, we can certainly help with the process itself.
Okay, thank you. And let's see, we may have one more. Okay, one more just slid in. Someone said that they requested access to a debrief and they have yet to hear back. Where does the debrief info, where is it located, and how can somebody get access to it?
Debriefs are done by the government. Now, you can look up the FAR 15 and send some of that information along if you think you're getting stonewalled, but I think you'll get there. Be patient with the government. They have a set timeline and a set amount of time to offer that debrief in. If you see, or if you'd like to explore it more, reach out to your local Ptac counselor, give them the pertinent information, and we can do some digging for you. But I'm certain that if you propose to the government, you request a debrief, they honor that. Thank you.
I think that's it for now. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thanks, Shonda. I very much appreciate it. And thank everybody for the great questions. I'm, as you can tell, I'm a pretty informal presenter. So I'd much rather have a dialogue and a conversation than just PowerPoint you guys to death. From the industry side, we used to always complain about death by PowerPoint, and I have become my own worst enemy, as you can see. But we'll get through this, hoping to share some pertinent information, some really good resources, and hopefully some insight through the process. Another consideration is preparing for an award as a subcontractor. It's very much likely to happen that you subcontract before prime contracting direct with the government. And that's a great thing because it introduces you to the environment. Some of the contract flow downs from your prime contractor, they really help prepare you to do business direct with the government. And you kind of dip your toe in the pool without having to dive right in with some of the more complex processes in dealing with government contracting. But when you do your subcontract review, make sure to check your contract flow downs. This has become more of an issue since the NIST 800-171 cybersecurity self-assessment, because the government mandates prime contractors flow that clause down to their subcontractors. And I've known small businesses that thought that, oh, that's just for the prime to do, we'll be fine. Then they get an email that says, hey, your funding's cut off until you get this NIST self-assessment done, and then you scramble. So make sure you review your contract flow downs. And again, registrations, make sure you're current in SAM.gov, and also make sure you're current in the prime's payment system, because cash flow is key. Cash is king for a small business. Here are some just basic certs and reps. Some of these that I've worked with some small clients on. You may have to have an equal opportunity employment plan. You may have to have some training in human trafficking. You may have to have, well, you will have to have the self-assessment if you're dealing in the DoD. You will have to have a CMMC certification if you're dealing with any CUI, covered information. And then there's also, for the manufacturers and some of the surveillance companies, Section 889 is a prohibition on contracting for telecommunications equipment and services from 11 different nationalist Chinese firms. That's seen as a huge risk in our space. And it is a huge issue when you have to go back and look through your whole supply chain to make sure that none of your equipment or services has been provided by those firms. There's a cost to that. And the Ptac is here to help you determine how to spread that cost, how to recoup that cost, and how to best work with your client to ensure that not only are they secure, but they're getting the services and the equipment they need. And these are just a few. You know, we're here to help you walk through many of the different FARs and DFARS clauses and help you get a bit of understanding, because this is what your company is signing up for. You know, you're certifying and representing your company that, yea, verily, I meet these standards. And if you're certifying that you are, and when in fact you aren't, the implications and consequences of that are pretty dire. So, you know, just be aware that this has a huge impact on your company's internal processes, and your company's cost, your overhead, your G&A. Yeah, it's definitely something you want to keep an eye on. Pro tip from inside the fence: know the terms and conditions of the contract, knowing the T's and C's, and learning and asking questions about how to get paid and how to document acceptance of deliverables. So you want to know some of these terms and conditions. And here's a good tidbit here: learning and asking questions. You want to have an open dialogue, and you want to have that relationship with the client to where you can feel free to ask, and also with the Ptac, because we want to see your success. You know, we're just as invested in your success as anybody is. So never hesitate. I always tell my clients, it's not if, it's when you have a question. And I want to assure them that they can't ask any dumb questions because I've already asked them all. Yeah, don't be afraid to put something out there and communicate with your Ptac counselor.
Billy, with that said, we do have a question.
Oh, wonderful. Great.
Do the same prevailing wage rates and other employee conditions, do the same prevailing wage rates and other employee conditions for the prime apply to the sub?
I would suggest I will get back to you on that. My initial take, without looking at any additional context, would be correct, because that to me would be a contract flow down when you're establishing that minimum rate. But I can certainly look at that with more context, and I can always pull in additional resource if we need to dig more into that.
Okay. And Mark, maybe you can, that was Mark Langford, you can email Billy about that.
Of course. Thanks for giving me the hard one, Mark. I appreciate that.
That's it for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Shonda. I appreciate it. And I'll kind of foot stomp the cybersecurity reps and certs, the cybersecurity upcoming standards. CMMC is the Cyber Maturity Model Certification. We at the Ptac can guide and advise. We have a ton of checklists. We have presentations for your system administrator. We have all of the manuals, all of the different controls that they want met. but we cannot execute. So the CMMC accreditation board has certified different companies that can help you prepare for this. And they are certifying, they're in the process of companies that can audit you to make sure that you're meeting levels 1 through 5. Now, we can help you up front. If you need help executing, we can always refer. I have several clients that are certified by the CMMC accreditation board, as we all do. And we can help in that process. But I just want to let you know it is coming. CMMC, if you're dealing with any covered information with the government, will be an additional cost to your business. It will be an additional processes and controls. We started out with the NIST 800-171 self-assessment. Everybody said they were great and they were secure. And then we had some boondoggles happen. So now the government's going to trust but verify. But we're here to help. The silver lining is that, you know, this is a value add to the government as well. Not every small business will be able to go through this process and will not have it together enough. So you're effectively, you're giving the government another value add to let them know that, yes, you can work within these constraints. Accounting standards, just like the DCAA question earlier, we can help with those as well. The next part, okay, so you've got your debrief. Now you're preparing for award. Very exciting times. I can tell you at this point, your business development director is taking a small vacation. He and your proposal manager are probably going to the beach for a couple of days, but you'll need them right back in the office because you know, there's a lot of considerations when you're preparing for award. Negotiation is one of them. Looking at the different FAR clauses that we were just looking at. Now, while you won't get the government to replace, you know, a full FAR clause on cybersecurity, maybe you can look at what they're defining as CUI and working within the CMMC level requirements. You can look at the different FAR clauses to try to get some less restrictive clauses in there that could help your company perform on the contract. You can look at the milestone schedule and make sure that you are working with the government to come up with reasonable schedule and milestones. You know, you want to prepare for success and you want to be realistic. I know that business development directors, I used to be one, so I'm guilty of this. We will tell you engineering will have it tomorrow. And engineers, you know, unless they can take a joke, which usually I'm not going to even go further on that statement, but they don't like that much. So you want to be realistic with the client, and you want to make sure that you're both in agreement on the different schedule with the different milestones, and you're both prepared for success, because the last thing you want is the client to go off telling their stakeholders that yes, it will be done tomorrow, when in fact it won't. You can look at award fee criteria, because again, you want to make sure that you're preparing for success, and you're looking at your own cash flow analysis, and you're looking at, you know, the realistic ability to perform to that. Adjustments to contract data requirements. IP and data rights, they're very important when you're looking at potential SIVers and sitters. And so not just with the government, but if I'm working with the university, if I'm working with subcontractors, I want to make sure that we're all crystal clear on what those that intellectual property and those data rights conversations and applications are. And getting this stuff out of the way up front, this communication, I can assure you will save you time and consternation on the back end of this. Be open, be honest, and get on the same page, because it's important. After negotiations, now we're getting ready for project kickoff. We've got the award signed. and now we're raring to go. Hold off on that. You want to hold an internal project kickoff. What you want to present to the client is going to be a unified message. You want everybody on the same page. You want a chief spokesperson to be dedicated to that communication. In order to do that, you have to rally the troops internally. You want to prepare for this kickoff, and that means pulling in the whole team, program management. You want the program management to know of potential risks and mitigations. You want to have your schedule and your burn rate up to date, and you want to factor in your critical path. You want to factor in any lead times. You want to know and be proactive when you potentially have to look at asking contracting for a mod. You want to be right on top of your resourcing. You want to have your key personnel and your management and your leads in place, because that will really flow down into your overall team. You want them to be there day one. Chances are they've already been proposed in the proposal. When you're looking at some of the more major projects, they may ask for additional team members and expertise outside of that key personnel, or at least sample resumes, so that they know that you have the right idea when it comes to putting the team together. Your contract manager, pivotal. They will be here and they will be dialoguing with the government every step of the way. You definitely want to know what you're signing yourself, or what you've already signed yourself up for. And you want to be set up in the management system. You want to be tracking everything from burn rate to holes in your team, so that you can plug them as quick as possible, which brings me to an inside the fence tip. Right up front, reach out to your small business office. They are your liaison between the SBA, the industry, and your program teams. They are here to advocate on your behalf. I brag all the time about our small business specialists over at Right Pat. AFMC, LCMC, and AFRL, they have whole teams of small business specialists that are hugely helpful, that are proactive, that are responsive, that are here to help with your success. So I just want to float that out there. They're an additional resource, and they really will. They'll go to bat for you. And so if you haven't done so yet, do that today. But also invite not just your contract and your program management. You're going to want the whole team there. You want accounting there to make sure that your accounting system is set up, and make sure that you're walking through that registration and wide area workflow. Human resources will be such a big part of the team. They need to know those key personnel requirements, staffing requirements. They need to know the landscape. You know, they need to know if it's the ability to rebadge incumbent resources. They need to know if there's a niche technology or skill set that they need to be really pounding the pavement for. Your subcontractor representatives, while they may not be at the debrief, they most certainly will be at the project kickoff. Remember, these team members, you've used their past performance. You have used their personnel, you've used their resumes. They need a seat at the table because they can really influence project success as well. And mind you, you know, if you're a large business and you have a small business as a subcontractor, but then that recompete ends up going small business, well, if you don't treat your subcontractors good, not much chance you're going to get on their team during the recompete. So just kind of something to think about, you know, from that overarching big picture standpoint. You know, what was once a subcontractor can quickly become the prime. So you definitely want to make sure that you manage those relationships, and that you give them their seat at the table. Now, the project kickoff is usually scheduled by the contracting officer on contract. You want to make sure you communicate with them upon contract award. With some manufacturing contracts, you'll also have to interact with DCMA, and they may be pertinent on some other types of contracts as well. During this project kickoff, you want to invite all pertinent stakeholders, and that's everything from the contracting officer, program manager, tech reps, end users, because you want that end user, that experience viewpoint, and also the budget. I've stated in earlier meetings that a requirement without funding is not an opportunity. It's just a requirement. So you want to make sure that that you have that line item, you have those plans funded. From your company, you want leadership there. You want to show that the full weight of the company is here to support that contract. You want your key personnel there. Of course, they need to be looped in. Your business development. And I don't just say that because I'm biased, because I'm a former BD guy myself. Business development is very much there for customer relationship management. Your business development guy often knows the big picture political landscape. Your business development guy is also there so that he can incorporate the information into his strategic business development plan moving forward. Your business development guy is also there because he should be in close contact with your program manager, part of that key personnel team. Because guess what? Your program manager is also charged with some business development activity. Because they're going to have the best relationship with the client, should have the best relationship with the client. They will be responsible for radiating that contract, for growing positions on that contract, maybe even for a small part of that contract marketing. And they'll also be asked from time to time to help proposal managers and proposal writers with some of that contract information for other related activities. So it all ties together. And most certainly your contract manager. You definitely want them to be present. Best practices for a project kickoff is to have an agenda you've reviewed with the client beforehand. If you can, try to resolve any potential disputes beforehand, if that's possible. Now, the part of the project kickoff, a lot of congratulations go around the table. You do your introductions, firm handshake, look them in the eye, and smile, because that's the first impression you want to have. A lot of meet and greet. As I've mentioned before, who's your chief spokesman? That will be really important because you want a unified message coming from your company. And your communication should go through that chief spokesperson. If you're a subcontractor, your communication is going to go through your prime contractor. If you accidentally end up talking to the client, a lot of times you will have to notify your prime contractor. Make sure you read your subcontract. For instance, I work a lot with the Air Force Research Lab as a small business myself. And I work with them through Wright Brothers Institute. I have a great relationship with the Air Force Research Lab, but I always loop in Wright Brothers Institute. They're a wonderful prime contractor. They're a great institution. And I really enjoy working with their folks. And I would never think of going behind their back and talking to the client, because that's not good for anybody. You don't want to sow those seeds of discontent. Outside of that, communications planning, again, you'll see me constantly refer to who's talking, what they're saying, open dialogue, because it's so important. Having that communications planning, have a chain of command, have a process for conflict resolution, because it's bound to arise, and definitely know what the information flow is going to be, because it really drives the tone of the contract there to have that in place. Be proactive. Again, this is your first impression. You want them to think the world of you. You want to be organized. You want to be, act like you've been there before, even if you haven't. And part of helping with that is what the Ptac does, because we've got our battle scars from being in some of these situations. Tip from inside the fence again. Attend the post-award conference if there is one. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Again, that comes back to having that open and honest dialogue with your client. That is going to be so pivotal moving forward, and you'll see it referenced again and again. This is straight out of a best practice. You want to remember that any commitments, and Rich Felicio sent this over to me. This is from the Georgia Tech, and I need to put this source in at the bottom. Oh, I did, Contracting Academy at Georgia Tech. Any commitments or directions given during postal work conference by the contracting officer must be within the scope of the contracting officer's authority and put in writing and signed. Whether or not they change the contract, get everything in writing because you want to document this for your contract files. Any commitment or direction given during the conference that changes the contract requires a contract modification. The bottom line is don't act on government commitments, directions, or changes unless they are in writing. Even if the end user, Bob, is your best buddy, and he says, you know what, Joe, this would be really cool. I think we definitely have to do this. The whole end user team, all the functional experts would be just through the roof, over the moon, if you made this change. Sorry, Bob, I got to ask Mike. He's our contracting officer. Your contracting officer, and this is why I have such reverence for this group of folks. A, they keep me honest a lot of times, yeah, especially with some of the advice I get from them. But B, your contracting officer is the only warranted individual to obligate the government to that contract and funding. So your budget officer, you get the funding passed through. In order to get it on contract, your contracting officer must sign off, and he's the only individual warranted to do that. Which is why it's so important to communicate with them. And that is the pro tip from inside the fence. Foot stop that only the contracting officer can change the terms and conditions of the contract. End users, reps, anybody else cannot direct changes to the contract. And keep that in mind. Keep good documentation, keep good records, and get everything in writing. And here's a good kickoff meeting agenda that I pulled up. This is from, I believe it's from DoD guidebook maybe, but it's a great agenda. The link is right here. It lists everything you can think of to do a kickoff meeting. It really helpful. Even if you don't end up using every different cell, it's certainly something that's helpful up front. Great resource. Okay, we got the kickoff meeting done. Everybody's on the same page. Our contracting, the government contracting officer, our contracts manager, where they're best buds. They're now going to each other's kids' bar mitzvahs and everything. But now it's time for ramp up. So, what do you do from there? And really the first step, you should already have this done. You should know who your project management key personnel are. Now it's time to install them. In your contract, is the government supposed to be giving you any government furnished information or government furnished equipment? A delay in that can delay the whole project. So that should definitely be discussed beforehand. Facilities. Are we working at our contractor facility? If so, you better have 30 open desks and 30 laptops ready for your folks and desktops. Access. Do we need any CAT cards? Do we need to get our folks cleared? Do we need to move folks that we are rebadging from another, from the incumbent over into our company, which brings to another great point to light. Your facility security officer is also pivotal if you're dealing with cleared personnel. Lead time, critical path, other schedule considerations. All of the aforementioned things will affect this. So you want to make sure that you have all of these risks, potential outcomes, and potential mitigations in mind when you're looking at these different nuances. Inside the fence pro tip again, communicate early and often with the program manager, contracting manager, and contracting officer representative, your core. Because they'll be able to help you with all of these things. They should be in the loop with all of these things. Yeah, it definitely, I'm guilty of this because of just my upbringing. I always copy too many people on an email if I'm dealing with other companies, other institutions. I'd rather copy too many than not enough. So, just keep that in mind. Even if you don't think it's within the purview of the contracting officer, make sure they're looped in until they ask you and beg you and plead with you to stop copying me on these emails. I'd rather have an informed contracting officer than someone who's taken by surprise with something.
Billy?
But also part of your ramp up, every other department in your company. Human resources, they'll have a huge task ahead of them for staffing the project, for rebadging incumbent workers, for new hires. And your resources for new hires won't just be your Indeeds and your LinkedIn job boards. You're going to hold job fairs that are specific to this contract. And the Ptac can help you hold those job fairs. We can put together, different outreach and pull together different resource partners to get people attending your event. We can push it out through Jobs Ohio. We can do a myriad of things to help you with that. You should already be connected with industry associations. I know that locally, the Armed Forces Communications and Electronics Association, at least in the IT space, they're putting together sort of a jobs resource page. You have different industry associations that can really help with that. And then employee referrals, do not overlook, Bob, the end user, or your IT folks to look at their different industry associations that they're involved with. They could be a great resource and offer a referral bonus. If somebody does, incentivize that within your company. And try to be a great place to work. I mean, that's a pretty good incentive too. But human resources also helps with salary model inputs. If you bid a certain rate with the government, they're going to hold you to that rate. And it's up to human resources and accounting, to try to make sure that your profit margins are protected. Accounting will also be doing a ton of other things. They're giving you cash flow analysis. They're working with the program manager on burn rate. They're working with wide area workflow for invoicing, expenses, allowable and non-allowable. Your IT department, they're doing your access and your setup. They're working with accounting for new equipment and for new software. Your business development, they're going to be pretty much all over the place. But what they're going to do is get that past performance updated so that they can start using it on additional proposals. They're incorporating lessons learned from your debrief. They're actually involved in some of that teaming coordination as well, because what you want is to do business with people like, and trust. So we're now, as a BD, working with that subcontractor or that prime contractor to go after more work together, because we just had a win. So, that means we must be doing something right. And first and foremost, client relationship management. We're talking to, different leadership. We're talking to our project manager. We're talking to the client to make sure that any client issues are being resolved effectively, because we're the ones that got us in this mess in the first place. So we want to see it be successful as well. Additional considerations, change management, no matter what you're doing. Change management is a huge piece of this. It's about leading the horse to water, but will they drink? Change management, it's very pivotal. And it can also set the tone to the project. If you're in an organization that's resistant to change and yet you're doing a modernization, you've got some work to do. Internal and external pressures. A great story I like to tell is a data management program that we won. We were a sub to a larger company, and we won this data management program, and we were over the moon. It was a big win for us. It was about 10 folks, and as a small business, 10 folks that's substantial. That's a substantial to add to your team. The project was going great. We were doing everything the client needed. What we failed to realize was the overall ERP that data was feeding was in dire straits, and the overall ERP ended up being canceled. So even though we were doing a wonderful job with our data management piece, didn't matter because the ERP that it was feeding no longer existed. So it turned into a bloodbath. And that great win and that great success quickly became one of the low points that I've ever had to deal with in my business development and VP career. So look at those external pressures. Make sure you understand the landscape. Make sure you understand the big picture, because that will really help you prepare for what some didn't see coming. Looking back on it, it was obvious. Should have seen it coming from a mile away. Nobody thought that a program that big would be canceled, but it was. Lessons learned. Again, wear it as a badge of honor at some point, but you definitely want to be cognizant of the different interrelated projects and pressures that you're dealing with. And some on this call may be familiar with what I'm referring to. Your ramp up approach. Is it rapid or gradual? You definitely want to discuss this with the client. If they're expecting 10 new resources tomorrow, you better be prepared for that. Incumbency. The incumbent should be helping you transition into this project if there is one. Is this a new requirement? That has its own set of implications. Scope creep. Scope creep is a terrible project killer. And that goes back to the ability of the contracting officer to direct changes. Any and every change should be documented, and that really will keep you out of trouble with scope creep. And then, different tools and resources that you're using. Will they be the same tools and resources that you're accustomed to using? Will they be changing at all? That has implications on, do I need to train my staff on any new tools and resources? Do we have to train the program staff to work within our tools and resources that we proposed? So a lot of different things going on to consider. You just want to make sure you keep these things in mind so that you can be as proactive as possible. Program management internally. It's a lot more than just looking at a burn rate and resourcing within Microsoft project. It does take a whole team, and I want to foot stomp. Excuse me. That this is a company-wide approach, and I say the same thing about a business development approach. Your program manager should be helping BD and vice versa. Accounting should be talking to BD and PM. So it really does take that interdepartmental communication. Regular PMRs internally. One of my first positions as a lowly marketing associate was to put together the slide decks for our company program management reviews. And I had to ask for information from our company principals. And that is, it was intimidating because while it's not always people's favorite activity to go and so it depends on how it's perceived. Some principals and some program managers see it as leadership holding their feet to the fire. I don't like that viewpoint, mainly because that got me yelled at a lot when I was just a young guy in my career. But overall, it really should be seen as a chance to lay everything on the table, to holler if your hair's on fire, and really set the company up to put their full weight behind your unified message back to the client. And that's your internal program management review. Just want to make sure we clarify that. That's where you're going to be honest as a company. And if there's a little bit of a donkey barbecue there, that's okay too. Because you're monitoring your contract performance and your subcontractors' performance. That's hugely important to do internally so that you know where you need to plug in more resources. And what did we just learn about resourcing? It takes accounting, it takes human resources, it takes business development, it takes your technical folks, it takes the whole company to effectively accomplish that. Maintain your thorough records. FAR 4.7, 4.8, you can feel free to click on those FAR clauses if you want to do some light reading. If you have any questions around records retention, don't hesitate to reach out to your local Ptac. We also have a National Contract Managers Association. You also have your DCMA reps and small business liaisons. You also have your small business office. A lot of those guys have former contracting experience. Plenty of people that can discuss that with you if you have questions. And then again, close communication with departmental stakeholders. Your internal PMR should not just include your program manager and your leadership. That's not getting anything done. You want to include your departmental stakeholders. Again, hugely important there. Internal management. You need to remember that your company has other projects, and this project may affect those other projects. So you need to consider them. You need to consider if this program will OCI you out of another opportunity and how you can prepare for that, be proactive, and build your China wall. OCI management is organizational conflict of interest. So if I'm doing the analysis of alternatives and the advisory and administrative services for a program office, chances are I probably shouldn't be proposing to a solicitation that I very well may be helping them review, things of that nature. Training, again, training requirements, do they need to be met? Do we need to make sure that our combating human trafficking training is up to date? Do we have any potential OSHA training to do? Things of that nature. And then contract marketing. Again, bringing in those BD guys. How can we market this contract to other customers? Is it possible? Are we on IDIQ or a MAC contract? Are we able to pull in related customers under the scope of this contract and give yourself some leeway with that vehicle? That will be important to your company's growth. Does the customer want to pull more requirements under this contract since they already have it in place? All great questions and things you should consider throughout the life cycle of your project. Again, internal subcontracting. You're now talking to a prime. Are you invited to the PMR? I've never personally been invited to one, but I know of many companies who have. So definitely check in on that, especially if you're part of the key personnel group and part of the program management team. How is your performance? Are you maintaining your records? Are you up to date on your flow downs? And are you up to date on your training? Again, if the prime contractor hits you with a, hey, you're not assessed, your training is not up to date, best believe they're going to cut the spigot on your funding. So either now you're carrying that funding internally, which will do just huge havoc to your cash flow as a small business. Or you just lost a resource on that contract. You need to think about those things. Here's some best practices. I pulled this right from the Program Management Institute. And if you guys haven't checked out the Program Management Book of Knowledge, and they have PMP certifications, great resource, guys. And I won't read everything to the left of this. Really what you want to keep in mind is sort of this, this matrix here. When you define your life cycle and your milestones, you want to have organization, systems, and roles in place to ensure that those milestones are being met. Those milestones cannot be met if they have a moving goalpost. So you want to have stable requirements and scope. And how do you get stable requirements and scope? Well, good question you ask. You want to make sure that you have work authorization. Again, going back to knowing your roles and responsibilities, your contracting officer, he is the, or she is the only one that can obligate the government to that contract and those modifications. And in order to have that, you want to be able to be proactive with planned commitments. And you also want to have your corrective action flow chart handy dandy, because I guarantee you will need corrective actions at some point. You will need mitigations to a risk. You will need that proactive decision making. You also want to have a good quality assurance framework in place. You know, what is the criteria for delivery and acceptance of these milestones, these different criteria, these different deliverables? You want to be, sorry, excuse me, tracking and analyzing that, you know, those claims commitments. I'm sorry, somebody seems to be off mute. Could everybody mute their line, please? Let's see. I'm just out here working, man. I'll keep going. We will trudge forward.
The diet plan comes with the macro calculator. So if you're trying to bulk up, you're trying to lean out.
You guys should be able to mute Shanda Harris from your side because that's where it's coming from.
That seemed to do it. That seemed to do it. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. See, even this presentation is a group effort, right? So we're getting there. Let me get back to where I was. Okay. So tracking and analysis. You want to be tracking those deliverables. You want to have an updated and a good review on your project plan and your project schedule and your project resources and your burn rate and any contractual issues that you may see upcoming. And you want that with that perspective, because you need to know when to escalate. Yeah, remember, it's taking a huge effort by all of your departments. When do we need to pull in leadership? When do we need to pull in our CEO, our president? When do we need to pull in our CTO? So you definitely want to have all of this in mind, because it all has implications on how you're managing your project. And keep in mind that the better you manage this project, the more likely that your praises are being sung inside the fence and you're getting the opportunity at more work, or they're dragging more work to this contract itself. A well-managed project speaks for itself. And I can tell you my experience within the government space, working with the folks inside the fence, if they like what you do, they are your best marketing. I mean, it's such a breath of fresh air to be able to work with those folks and have them really appreciate and like the effort that you're putting in. Again, I'm the consummate business development guy. It's in my blood. It's actually, I think, genetic. My father was in business development as well. My grandfather was a bit in business development, so I get it honestly. But this is the business development chart. And I just want to show how business development, project management, and leadership, they're all interlinked when it comes to growing contracts. Because if the company is not growing, then there's going to be people on the bench that can't get placed in new positions. There's going to be some slimming down that's probably going to be getting done. So I want to just, and I won't go through every quadrant here, but I want to show how the project manager is actually, they got a role in business development. Your CEO and your leadership have a role in business development. Your business development has a small role in some of this project management because your business developers should know the overall political landscape. They should be able to offer solutions, and they should be able to connect with different resources around that program. External management. Yeah, contract management comes to mind first and foremost. Develop a great relationship with your contract manager, your contract officer, your contracting representative. It does pay dividends. They can manage potential scope creep. They will help you to manage to the requirements and the deliverables. Again, foot stomping this, only the CEO is warranted to obligate the government, not your end user, not Bob and, and functional. So keep that in mind. Customer relationship management, hugely important. You definitely want to proactively manage the relationship with your customer. And that's at all levels of the organization, your program, your tech lead, contracting, your end users, your tertiary stakeholders. If my system is feeding your system bad data, that's not a good look. So I want to make sure that you're invited to my different, my different PMRs and things like that, because I want to know, is my data transformation working? Is it causing you headaches and things of that nature? And that also, just to quickly reiterate something on the additional proposals that we'll be doing. When we create this past performance, we want this past performance to be similar in size, scope, and complexity to our ongoing projects. And complexity is this system standalone, or is the system I'm working on feeding 2,000 other systems within the Air Force? That has huge implications. Great pro tip from inside the fence. Focus on your performance. If you have issues, bring them up to your contracting office as soon as possible. Again, be proactive because your contracting can help you figure out a way ahead. I enjoy just conversing with the contracting officers over inside the fence because they do keep me honest. But we have a great relationship, and they'll tell me the implications of what I'm asking. They'll give me resources. It's just such a great resource. And just something from my perspective, and I'll still kind of joke around this, that I'm always scared of your contracting officer because they are the only warranted person to obligate the government. But I say that partly in jest because I've developed some great relationships with those folks, and that's really important. So develop that relationship, guys. Program management, regular PMRs. They're painful sometimes, but you've already done your internal PMR, so you're fully prepared for this and you're proactive, right, guys? Delivery and acceptance criteria and standards. You want to know what you're signed up for. You don't want the moving goalpost. Open communication and updates. Update often, and definitely make sure if there's any risks around schedule, resource, budget, that they are part of that conversation. Because the customer, they're a teammate at this point. You guys signed up for this stuff together. And so their success is your success and vice versa. And that's how you should treat that relationship. Business development, again, look at any additional requirements and positions. Try to be proactive with the client. Not saying to bug the client. There is definitely, there's some gray area, but a marketed line between business development being helpful and being a resource and business development bugging the client. Do not bug the client. Develop a good relationship with the client and be there as a resource for the client. Develop a long-term relationship based on trust with the client. Do not bug the client. Contract and solution marketing, of course, you want to radiate this, but also helping manage some of the political landscape. And that's that big picture view of looking at the program itself, the organization as a whole, and some of those implications. It's time for project closeout. So we've made it. We're through the different nuances of program management. Is this being recompeted? If it is, you'll be the first to know because you're either the prime contractor or the subcontractor, and you've done a really excellent job. Is it moving to another vehicle? Huge risk, because in order for you to have a contract, not only do you need a requirement in funding, you also need a contract vehicle, which is an added wrinkle and added complexity in this space. You really want to be aware of that. Your business developer, your program manager, your tech lead, and your contracts manager should all be aware of the potential of this because it has huge implications on whether or not you can bid the next one. Is it becoming a different set aside? And you guys are in that program office. You should be working with the client to really see what's in their best interest, also preparing for the future. That all becomes a capture management consideration. Are there outside pressures? Are there political pressures? These pressures can range from true political pressures, such as congressional inquiry, to how these different program offices interact with one another. Changes in leadership. There's changes in leadership and personnel all of the time in the government space. Does the new boss not like you guys? It's as simple as that. It's kind of like a high school question, but it definitely has implications. What's the overall program health? I'm hoping it's good. I'm hoping we've done everything we could in our power to ensure that the program's been successful, that the end users have got the technical and functional capability that they needed. Are there budgetary issues? What's the next budget that's approved by Congress look like? Is it getting cut? Are programs getting cut? And again, with the political issues that just seem to crop their ugly head in many instances. This is a great closeout process for the client. And I pulled this right from the DoD procurement toolbox. It's great to have insight into what the client's doing, what they're going through. As you can see, they'll make sure that all parties have fully satisfied the obligations, requirements have been delivered, government has paid in full, the excess funds on the contract have been de-obligated. If you're good at program management and contract management and resourcing, your goal as a small company or as a large company is to spend the funds on the contract. So if they're de-obligating funds, you haven't done your job. Or there's circumstances outside of your control. But that's really hard to see from an industry side. Have property rights been settled? Administrative actions finalized? Documentation? Again, everything in writing. And then your contract completement statement. So you really want to make sure from the industry side that all of your deliverables have been accepted, all of your obligations are satisfied, because what that allows you to do, submit your final invoice. Make sure all of the funds have been expended. Has your notice of contract termination been received or contract closeout? Again, goes back to your records. You want to keep those records. Is a reconciliation audit needed? How are you going to dispose of your covered information, and how are you going to retain your records? Will this change your internal processes? Do you need to increase security? Do you need to think about those different implications? Government furnished information and equipment. Do you have to return laptops, things of that nature? Have you settled your subcontract? So have you paid off your subcontractors? Are you guys even there? Any past performance reporting that you need to work with the government on? and check in on. You have different past performance systems that they report to. Then transition planning. Even if you don't win the recompete, you need to let the client know that you are still here and still fully intend to work with them. And in those efforts, you will put the full weight of your capability behind you to ensure a successful transition to the new prime contractor. It hurts. It's a tough situation. But you can do that with grace, and you can let the client know that, although you didn't win the follow-on, that you still are invested in their success. And that's exactly what we did on that data management. It actually, we lost the follow-on contract. It went to another company, and then they terminated the whole ERP, which was just a very weird time. But we transitioned with grace. A couple of our folks were even rebadged. And you want to see that as a small business. I would rather see one of my technical folks get rebadged with another company than me have to potentially put them on my bench and eat into my working capital fund and my cash flow, only to be let go a month later because I couldn't find a place for them. Your employees matter, and you want to see the best for them. And it happens all the time. I mean, we're a big industry, but we're a small valley here in Miami Valley. So the amount of times you're rebadged, sometimes you even make the full loop and you end up with the company that you started out with. It's just it's part of the business. So no hard feelings there. This is a pretty cool timeline on when you can expect the contract to be completely closed out. And excuse me, you can see with with each different type, it could be anywhere from 6 to 36 months. So it definitely matters what contract type you have. That has direct implications. And if you're ever, again, in the mood for light reading, the DoD Procurement Toolbox, they have this great contract closeout guidebook, a lot of other resources as well. So whether you're inside the fence or outside the fence, I always tell my clients it's great to know what they're doing over there, because that affects how you message them, how you approach them, how your internal business processes work, because you want your internal processes to mirror theirs, so that you guys stay on the same page, so that you're speaking the same language. So that, that's something to keep in mind there. Here's a great checklist that they're using internally. You can actually pull this out and pretty much use it as a checklist on your side. You just kind of change some words around, and make sure that you're complying with a lot of what they're doing. Here's the continued best practices from inside the fence. And again, I'm really grateful to have such a great Ptac team around me. They've helped a lot with giving me information, giving me review. I'm great to have such a small business ecosystem around me. Very grateful, because without them, you wouldn't get some of this killer content, this killer insight into what they perceive the issues being. Beware of scope creep. If ever in doubt, communicate with the contracting officer. Regularly schedule updates and meetings. I'm not a fan of meeting every day, but sometimes with, especially when there's issues on the contracts, you need to. A lot of teams do PMRs quarterly offsite, and that really helps as well. I can tell you it's not fun doing a week-long PMR offsite and then having to manage the massacre that is your email inbox when you get back or in the evenings. But it's necessary. It really is necessary to get these these interdepartmental stakeholders together and discuss the program. Specify your subcontracting reporting requirement through ESRS. That was something I didn't think about. There's an electronic subcontracting reporting system. It's not always applicable here, guys, but you definitely want to keep in mind if that's in your contract. And then something I alluded to earlier, If you're a subcontractor, resolve your issue with the prime. Again, you guys want to have a unified front with the client, and you want to have that good working relationship. And oh, there's a typo there that I forgot to correct. That's my apologies. But preview of the contract is with the prime. So as a subcontractor, you are working with your prime, not the government. I mean, end users, the government, but your client's the prime. So keep that in mind there. And with that, Shonda, I am officially through my slide deck. I'd like to thank everybody for hanging out with me today, and hopefully getting some content that is that's applicable to you guys, that helps, and knowing that we're a resource. You know, if you have any questions, if you need any support, you know, we're here to help you guys be successful.
All right, thank you so much, Billy. If there are any other questions, that was a lot of great information. I know you threw a couple of resources out there, and you had links to the toolbox, the DoD contract closeout guidebook. I had a chance to quickly go there. Great resource. Looks like it's small, 36 pages. So if you get a chance, go ahead and download that. The DoD procurement toolbox that Billy talked about, but a lot of great information today. Yes, the slides will be made available. Also, I believe Jane put the link for the recording. It will be posted on the OU Ptac site. But just want to recap just a couple of good points that he brought up about a requirement. And if a requirement doesn't have funding, that it's not an opportunity, it's just a requirement. So that, I think, is pretty significant, because a lot of times you could spend your wheels and a lot of time and a lot of effort on something, but if there is no funding from that agency for that requirement, then, you know, it's a no-go. Maybe at some point it will, but and then also just beware of the scope creep. I wanted to bring that up. That was one of the last points. I mean, he touched on it at a couple places, but as small businesses, I just, with the position I work with 8A firms, we do have to get a certification as far as FAC-C certification, government dealing with contracts. So we just took a class, Jill and I, at the beginning of April, from a contracting officer, and you'd just be surprised at some contracts where if it's the core, if it's a specialist that may say, okay, yes, we do want these changes. You could go ahead and add this, increase that, take this out. And if the contractor does it and it doesn't have the proper sign off and the authority from the contracting officer, then those, you know, it can come back to bite you as a small business, and you could be responsible for that. So just make sure with any of those changes, as Billy said, get everything in writing. Get everything in writing. What'd you say?
Hugely important.
Hugely important. Hugely important. Yes.
It's trust but verify. You want to have that relationship, that open dialogue with the customer, but you have to let them know up front that this is our process and that the contracting officer will be looped in.
Okay.
And we don't want to offend the client, but you're right. It's great implication there.
Right, right. So definitely always get those changes in writing. Looks like we do have a question that has come through. Are you available to speak to the post-award request process in DIBS?
So I have some experience here. I can tell you that some folks use the PARs more than others. That being said, best practice is still to document everything through those PARs because that's your official record. Now, remember, we're looking at the authoritative data source, and that's it. So to sort of, you know, cover yourself, you want to make sure, even if they don't pay attention to it, that you're using that as your tool. Because that, if you're dinged for being non-responsive on a contract, you can always use that record as proof that, yes, hey, I was proactive here. So if you ever have any questions around that, I'm not as familiar with the DIB system as some of our other counselors, but I have had a couple situations with clients, and there's some of the broader implication there. But if you need specific help, I am more than happy to pull some of our other counselors in for consult, because again, it takes a whole team. Even here at the Ptac,
Right.
you know, we need to rely on each other just as much as the small business community.
Right. Right. All right. Thank you for that. Someone sent this directly to me, but I'm going to go ahead and say the question just for everyone. They said, where can you find or download the DoD procurement toolbox? Really, all you could Google it. I just Googled it.
Okay.
DoD procurement toolbox. You can Google it. Also, a great resource, and they mentioned this last week on the webinar. A lot of resources as it relates to government contracting, federal government. USA.gov is the official kind of search engine for the federal government. So USA.gov, if you want to type in any government acronyms, any government information, you can use that. I just Googled DoD procurement toolbox, and you should be able to pull that up, and some of the other resources.
I want to do a screen share real quick, Shonda. I came across this in my inbox the other day. I think this is the coolest thing.
Oh,
when you're looking at the government contracting processes,
I like that.
And their different stages, DAU came up with this contracting subway map. And
I
so
love
it shows
that.
you, you know, when we need industry engagement, when they're doing acquisition planning, proposal evaluation, and contract award. And they have it, everything's linked here. So it's just I'll put the link in the chat.
Okay.
But if you want to understand the government acquisition lifecycle, this is really where they're going. You can tell they're going FAR Part 1, 7-11, DFARS on cybersecurity, some of what we reviewed earlier.
Wow.
Then you can see where they're pulling in industry. Now you'll see
Fantastic.
industry engagement begins all the way at the very beginning. And that's where you want to be during this acquisition life cycle in order to give yourself the best chance for success.
I love that. You're going to post that in?
I will. And there's also, since I'm, I like the alternative approaches as well. They have some innovative, different, you know, other transaction authorities, innovative acquisition tools they post here too.
Can you add that to somewhere in your slides too? So that that can be in, yeah. And then that way, great resources. Yeah, and check those out. Again, as I said earlier, a lot of you may be at different stages of you doing business with the federal government, or you desiring to do business with the federal government. I also want to encourage you, don't get frustrated. I know Billy gave a lot of information today, and as you are starting to get acclimated and you're starting the process, maybe you bid on something you didn't win, but Ptac is there. Your Ptac counselor will be there to help you at every step of the way. If you're just getting started, you need to register, and you need to get your DUNS number now. Eventually, it will be your unique identifier. If you need to register in SAM, if you need to learn how to respond to a bid, your Ptac counselors can help you. So definitely follow up with them. Thanks, Billy, for posting that. If we have any other questions, go ahead and put those in the chat. If not, I'll go ahead and give just the closing remarks about this. Again, wraps up the series for this month in May. And again, it will be on the Ptac's website. Next month, we will be focusing on, where did I put my notes? Best practices for contract success. We are going to do another series. So just some additional tools and information we are going to hear from SBA PCR Procurement Center representative and how they can assist you as it relates to contract success. Once you get a contract, some things that you can do, tips and whatnot. Also, SBA CMR procurement, PCR is Procurement Center representative, and CMR is, see, I forget the acronyms. Commercial market representative, commercial market representative. You don't hear too much about CMRs, but we'll hear from them, from their perspective and what they can do. Also, I believe we're going to get a chance to get hopefully two representatives from two government agencies. We're working on getting their commitment to see if they can give some perspective. And then we will have a panel. I always love panels of some small businesses where you can hear from their perspective and some things that they have done, those that have been successful at getting contracts, and hear from a different variety of small businesses from a variety of different industries. Also, because of all of the recent updates with SAM, and if you're not aware of that, sam.gov, betasam.gov has now gone back to sam.gov. And so if you haven't gone to the site, where you could just type in information to do a search on a company, now you have to register. You have to put in your name, you have to create a profile. So there are a lot of changes. So we talked about this with Billy, and at the end of June, we are going to do a training, a webinar on the different, the recent updates and the changes that have taken place with sam.gov. So you definitely don't want to miss that, because there's a lot. I'll be taking notes on that. I went to it the other day and I was like, you have to log in, you got to create a profile, to ask questions about who you are. So definitely take time and join us for that at the end of June. And I believe that's it. Thank you so much again today for joining us. Thank you so much, Billy, for this great information. If this is your first time logging in, if you don't know who your Ptac counselor is, you can visit. If you can type in the link for them to visit the OU Ptac site so that you can sign up, take advantage. If you haven't touched base with your local Ptac counselor, you may want to give them a call. The recording should be posted probably sometime next week. It takes a couple of days. Ptac.ohio.edu. So if you need to get in touch with a Ptac counselor, if you need to sign up, it is free, of course, ptac.ohio.edu, and it's based on where you're located, what county you're located. Thank you so much for joining us today. Again, thank you so much, Billy. Everyone have a wonderful day. It's beautiful weather here in Columbus, and have a great, wonderful Memorial Day weekend, a long holiday weekend, and enjoy your weather. Stay safe, and hopefully you can join us again next month. Thanks again.
Thanks so much, Shonda. Thanks everybody for attending, and thank you everybody who helped make this presentation.
Yes.
And give their inputs. It's definitely a great thing.
And I don't know if you saw the comments, Billy. Everyone said great, great job today, great information. As a business development guy, this one comment, this was extremely helpful. Sincerely appreciate the time and the info. So a lot of great comments, great content.
Yeah, I appreciate AJ attending as a business development guy. Sometimes, the pre-award stuff is more front of mind, but post-award is definitely important as well. And if you ever want to talk shop, AJ, I'm always available to share war stories with you.
Somebody said, I needed this information. Very informative presentation. Great. So great that you were able to join us. Please, hopefully you can join us next month as well. Certainly, everybody have a great day.
Thanks, Sean. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.